this weekend sees the return of the 95th Academy Awards to Los Angeles. Among the Oscars nominees are blockbusters including Top Gun: Maverick, Everything Everywhere All at Once, and All Quiet on the Western Front. 4 out of 5 of this year's Best Original Song nominees will perform at this year's ceremony. Oscars producer Glenn Wise has confirmed that Lady Gaga will not perform Hold My Hand from Top Gun: Maverick because she's been busy shooting the second installment of The Joker, but she will attend as a nominee. Meanwhile, talk show host Jimmy Kimmel will be hosting the ceremony for the third time since his debut in 2018. Arise correspondents Kachi Ofia and Judita Da Silva have the latest from the Dolby Theatre in Los Angeles. Good morning, ladies, and good to see you.
Good morning. Well, yesterday, we had Nkechi and Sheiton, and it's good to see both of you today. But we'd like to know from you, what's on the cards at the Oscars this year from your own perspective and your predictions, as you did last year? Please go ahead.
Well, it's a really interesting year, I would definitely say. The Oscars have had to deal with various issues, some of which, of course, includes declining ratings, more people talking about how not so popular the Best Picture nominees have been. Of course, we cannot forget the Oscar slap. Unfortunately, that is a conversation that will stick with us for a long time. So the Oscars have definitely evolved through the years. But this year, we're seeing the Oscars sort of come to their home, understanding that, the truth is, we cannot be what everybody expects us to be. We see them returning home, sort of, in the sense that, for instance, last year, we saw them give away the technical awards before the main show actually started and while the red carpet was going on. And this year, they're just going back to the routine of giving off all the awards at the same time. We're also seeing them stop experimenting with the hosting gig. They went from 3 to no one. Now they gave us Jimmy Kimmel, who is a regular Oscar face. So we're seeing the Oscars just return to what they're used to. I mean, they gave us like 2 nominees in Best Picture that people know. Right?
Yeah.
That's Top Gun and Avatar: The Way of Water. So they're definitely a lot more comfortable this year. I'm not expecting the ratings to be through the roof, which is largely in part to the fact that most people aren't even watching live TV anymore, not even about the Oscars. But yeah, I think it's going to be a fantastic year for the Academy.
Yeah, I think bouncing off of that, what the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences has to do is juggle the proliferation of change. You're in a situation where the Oscars has always been seen as this bastion of celebrating movie making, great storytelling. They are the custodians of the purity of what it is to make film, which is to tell a story and the art of it. So that is why they've always kind of shied away from popular cinema. Because when you think over the years with big things like The Lord of the Rings, they waited until the third part was done and then they gave them a few awards to acknowledge what they'd done for cinema. On the back of COVID, it's a different landscape now. The reason why you would have to have a film like Avatar and Top Gun: Maverick nominated is because even Steven Spielberg said it at one of the Academy luncheons. He went to Tom Cruise and said, "You saved cinemas for us because post-COVID, no one could do those kinds of numbers without having superheroes." So the Academy has to recognize what the industry is and where it stands and show that we celebrate that. That's why it's nominated. But when you look at the pastiche of the nominees today, the actual films, it's mainly independent films. Everything Everywhere All at Once, Triangle of Sadness, The Banshees of Inisherin. The Whale, these are all indie films because that's where you find what the Oscars was built on. You are the mecca for artists who express themselves through motion picture. And so even though money has come into it and the commercialization of film is what sustains the industry, talent, purity and art has to be the most valuable and sacred. And that's what the Oscars is.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Judita. Very well said. Now, talking about ratings, I'm glad you talk about how the ratings of Oscars have tanked over the years and what they'd be looking to do in shoring it up this year and through the performances. So I'd mentioned that Lady Gaga won't be on stage this year to perform. However, which or who should we be looking forward to performing on stage this year?
Oh, you know who you want to talk about.
Yes, I do.
I'm just going to leave her to it. Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so first of all, Ladies and gentlemen, I actually have both of them, but I'm going to start with Rihanna.
Okay.
100% Rihanna. I really am looking forward to Rihanna showing
You're
up.
so pretending. You know who you care about.
Fine. I want to see Natu.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I wanted to be like, I'm Nigerian, I'm repping, but I'm sorry, Bollywood is it for me. Now, first of all, everyone has to see RRR to understand where my excitement is coming from. Never in a million years would I have believed that this movie would have come as far as it did. It gives the Bollywood vibe. It's so extra, for lack of a better word, but it's still a beautiful film. And it just goes back to what you were just saying about the Academy being the mecca for just the purity of filmmaking, because they have embodied that. Now, Bollywood in its purest form, the singing, the dancing, what they stand for, without having to be anyone else, which is what I really want Nigerians to pick out of what I'm about to say. Bollywood staying to their true integrity. They were able to still make this nomination. Of course, they will be performing on stage, and I'm just excited to see all the saris and the dancing that's going to play out. Yes, the sparkles. It's going to, because they always put on a show. They might have people falling from the ceiling.
Just calm down.
Think about
this. This is what I have to say about Kachi. You have to always rein her in, because the minute there's sparkle, zhuzh, and just extra,
I get really excited.
She's there. She's all there. But I completely agree, because when you think back to Slumdog Millionaire, what you're showing is the land beyond, because everyone thinks the movies revolve around Hollywood. They don't. China is a bigger market. Africa is a bigger market. India is a bigger market. And again, what I said about the proliferation of change, the Academy has to recognize what the world is and how broad it is, and it isn't two-dimensional or a cookie-cutter template that looks like you. Our Natu Natu is going to be a moment. And even though we know we're going to be excited about Rihanna, I do believe Kachi is right. Natu Natu, as far as performance go, will be a moment, because it's something where they take America to India and show the resplendency of that connection, all done through music and dance and motion picture at the same time.
And just to add to that, Rihanna just came off the back of the Super Bowl performance, and we all know that was not the greatest performance of, ever of life.
That lifts me up is slow, so it should play into where she is.
I think it's going to be more about how she embodies the performance. It's not even going to be about the fact that she's singing the song. It's what's she going to wear. Are we going to see the bump?
She's going to lean into Chadwick Boseman.
Yes, there's also going to be that.
Judita, if you can hear me. And I'd like to, happen something you talked about, because the Oscars has been known for the independence of the art itself. And that's why it's not every movie that makes commercial success that makes that Oscar success. And also on the African continent, we've been known for the independence of the arts. Wonderful storytelling, but we don't seem to get in there. I'm happy you talked about Slumdog Millionaire that was produced by Danny Boyle many years ago and how well it did at the Oscars. But we also have competitive stories that are individual to us on the African continent, but we don't move the needle. And that's why people have been calling for that diversity with Oscar. Oscar is so easy to go to Asia and other markets like India, which are markets they've been before. But Nigeria is far lacking. The African continent, far lacking. How can we rein the Oscars in? I think that's a big conversation on the table. Judita?
Yeah, I mean, that is the golden question, but I've always had the answer to, I've had my answer to it, and there are many people like me, but how to make people listen and take it seriously. This is the simple template. Nigeria has the potential, has access to something incredible. That's two strong legs on which the industry can stand. That is Nigeria's indigenous cinema and Nigerians in the diaspora. There is exceptional talent with worldly training out there that love being Nigerian, that remember being Nigerian. But Nigerians feel like I probably shouldn't say Ajebota, but that's a kind of stigma they attach to those of us who live and work abroad. But we love being Nigerian. When you break the two together to connect, the level of filmmaking will go up. But then at the same time, like I said, it's about discipline. When you look at the films that are being made in Nollywood, they want to be big, they want to be funny, they want to be colorful. But then when you start lasering down to the actual technicality of filmmaking, like we did our review of all the Anikulapo's and the King's Horseman, things like makeup, editing, lighting, when the sound goes out, what you should leave on the cutting room floor, what you should put in, the plot trajectory, what is necessary to getting the audience to go with you. These are things you learn in film school. That's discipline. And I know a lot of these people, they've had to build the industry and pull themselves up by their own bootstraps. But you have to recognize discipline and training is fundamental to doing an art form like filmmaking. And all the people across the world will spot this a mile off the minute they watch 5-10 minutes of your film. So whereas you want to sprint before you can crawl, that might work in Nollywood. But when you step into the ring globally, you're going against contenders that spent 20 years training. Ridley Scott made 2,000 TV commercials before he stepped on a movie set because he felt he wasn't ready until he'd done that. Look at who Ridley Scott is. Quentin Tarantino is an Encyclopedia Britannica of film before he made Pulp Fiction or Reservoir Dogs. That's how much you need to care about being ready to pick up the quill and write the script, to hold the camera and shoot from the lens. Nigerians cannot rush. You have to take your time and be disciplined and do what needs to be done to achieve excellence.
Absolutely.
So you're saying we've not learned the technicality despite so many years, Kachi?
No one owes the Oscars, basically.
Well, let me ask you two things.
Again, I missed that.
Oh, Kachi, I said, are you concurring with Juditha by saying that we have not learned the technicalities really over the years, despite how long we've been doing this?
I completely agree with that. You know, like I said, even on Rise 360, we've spoken about this extensively, especially at the point when the Nigerian Oscar Selection Committee, they were in a quagmire as to whether or not they were going to send a selection. This was during the period where there was the King's Horseman and Anikulapo as the top contenders, you know, for the Oscar selection for this year's international feature film. And of course, you know that the NOSC, they were completely divided about it. While some felt like we had a selection, others didn't. But I think the crux of the issue here is this. No one has an entitlement to the Oscars. We don't have to send in a film. The reality is Bollywood has been in existence for a very long time, and this is the first time that we're seeing them being celebrated in this particular category, you know, as a single film, as a single song, whether it's in English or in any other language. So it does take a lot of work that we really need to begin to put in. It boils down to those little things like Juditha said, like the continuity, for instance. Yes, we're putting a lot of money into our films, but it also goes down to the screenplay. It also goes down to the art of the storytelling. So 100%, I'm not surprised that we haven't really gotten to that point yet, because oftentimes when you have these conversations, what you'd hear is, oh, we have great films, or we've been doing this for a really long time. We could be doing this for another 30 years and still not get it right.
Being entertained is not great art.
Being entertained, perfectly said. Being entertained is not great art. The fact that we enjoyed the film, like we said earlier, when you put some of the movies that we churn out, besides some of the nominees for Best Pictures, I keep going back to Drive by Car by Yusuke Hamaguchi. Such a simple film.
So cheap.
And a film school student could have put that film together, but it's how the movie was put together and the intentionality behind it. The understanding that this movie might not make big bucks in the theaters. This movie might not be everyone's favorite, but it is a good film. We need to reorient our minds from, I want to make a lot of money from this, or I want to trend on Twitter, to the fact that this is art and that's just all I'm interested in creating. And I don't think as Nigerians we're there yet.
Quickly, we have very limited time now, but two things. One, President Zelensky of Ukraine wanted to be given an opportunity to address the Oscars. Is there any conversation around that? Has there been any difference apart from the silence from the Oscars? That's one. The second one is the crisis team that we understand has been put together to prevent something similar that happened to Will Smith last year. What did you observe in that regard? Quickly.
As far as Zelensky, I think what the Academy has to do is move away from politicizing the Oscars, because you tread a very dangerous ground. Because if you do it now, things will happen in the future and you'll have to address that. You have to be apolitical. And although you have empathy for the human side of the tragedy, you have to take a step back. That is your position as entertainers. But as far as the other question was?
For the crisis team, interestingly, the selection of presenters for this year, because we know Chris Rock appeared on stage as a presenter for an award last year. And while usually the presenters provide a soft landing, during the show. So they crack a few jokes here and there. Basically, they have a large selection of comedians. Chris Rock alluded to the fact that he's a small man. Maybe that's why Will slapped him. They have Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson presenting, so I don't think anyone is going to try to hit him. So definitely that crisis team is basically in place to avoid anyone stepping up on stage. It's basically security saying you cannot do this and it will not be allowed. So I don't think anyone is going to be pulling on any stunts this year. And again, it's comedians, a lot of comedians, in fact. So there's definitely going to be a lot of jokes, and I think people will read the room and just, behave appropriately this year.
Well, thank you very much, Kachi, and thank you very much, Juditha. Thank you very much indeed.